Valentine's Day, on the third day of the third month, exactly a decade ago, March 3rd, 2007, Girls' Day in Japan, IntLawGrrls was born. It appeared at a website that I had launched by accident. Not long after Googling the words, "how to start a blog." Our birth announcement, which you see now on the plasma screen, said, "IntLawGrrls joins a world where cultures, ideas, and markets commingle, where humanity reveals both its best promise and its worst underside." That post mentioned women from whom we drew inspiration. Stateswomen like German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Judges like Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the United States, Beverly McLachlan of Canada, never said that word aloud before. Ronald Higgins of the International Court of Justice, and Françoise Tokens of the European Court of Human Rights, as well as Nobel Peace Prize winners like Shirin Ebadi, Wangari Maathai, and Rigoberta Menchú, who many of you saw in the film repeated times last night. That first post also stated, "It is our hope, through IntLawGrrls, to strengthen our voices as we continue to teach and work in international law, policy, and practice." In that post, we named our 8 founding women, including myself. I am honored to recognize the 5 others who are here with us today, and I ask them to stand as their names are called. Elena Bayless. Thank you. Karen Bravo. Naomi Norbert. Hari Osofsky, and Jaya Ramji Nogales. Please join me in The 2 women who are not here today are justifiably quite busy. They are Beth Gilman, who today is the president of Mills College in Oakland, California, and Hélène Ruiz Fabri, then the president of the European Society of International Law, later the dean of the Sorbonne Law School, and now the director of the Max Planck Institute in Luxembourg.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to Dean Rutledge. Congratulations to Diane for her phenomenal achievement in building this group. Thank you to Diane and the editorial group for suggesting that we memorialize or honor members of IntLawGrrls who are no longer with us. So I will focus in more depth on Hope Lewis, but there are others who were participants in IntLawGrrls who are no longer here. So in the last 10 years, IntLawGrrls had welcomed nearly 500 women and several men as contributors. A few of those members are no longer with us. They include Sherry Rosenberg, a Holocaust scholar who taught human rights and related courses at New York's Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law, and Hans Peter Powell, a judge on the International Criminal Court. More recently, in December, we lost Hope Lewis. So I want to give a tribute to Hope Lewis, a Leonard Gap, 1962 to 2015. So Hope Lewis opens her 1996 Maine Law Review article, Global Intersections, Critical Race, Feminist, Human Rights, and International Black Women, by declaring, as an African-American feminist law professor who is visually impaired and the daughter of immigrants, I'm often torn as to which social justice organizing conference to attend first. She continued, I learn more each day about survival in the intersection of racism, sexism, ableism, and nativism. Perhaps that is the basis for my attraction to the international human rights movement. Despite its limitations, that movement is at its best when it undermines the isolation that oppressed peoples and individuals can experience.
primarily in my capacity as the president of the American Society of International Law. And congratulations to Diane and to all who've been part of this enterprise for the last 10 years. The American Society has changed a great deal in the last 10 years, for the good, in my view, and I'm not the first female president of the American Society. That happened 20 years ago. At the time, I was the first female chair of the ABA section of international law, and that's another set of stories. But we've come a long way, baby, as they say.
I think it was actually Diane's idea, and you can fill in the blanks, but actually Beth is the one who emailed me and said, my friend's starting up this blog.
Do you want to be on it?
Do you want to be on it? And I was in my first year of teaching. I was like, me? Do you want me? I'm like a new person. But you know more than that story about Diane.
That was exactly it. I remember her calling and saying something to the effect of this new thing called the blogosphere, and there was Opinio Juris at the time, not yet Lawfare, not yet Just Security. Many of the international law blogs hadn't yet been formed.
And OJ was all male.
OJ was all male with one exception, I think.
Right, I think there was
the
one
token woman who was
right.
writing for Opinio Juris. And so I think she just felt like there was a gap in the blogosphere and had this idea, and that we would write under pseudonyms, if you remember, sort of like having our avatar, our international law avatar. So we all got to pick somebody who would be and we wrote under that pen name, and that sort of became cumbersome after a while, and we dispensed with it. But then a recruitment drive happened, and we called around to our friends, and slowly but surely we began to post, and it became easier and easier. And I remember agonizing over my first couple of posts, and then I realized that blogging was so liberating in a way, because it didn't have to be perfect, and you didn't have to footnote every claim, and you didn't have to, you could just throw in a hyperlink and send people off if they were interested in doing follow-up. So it ended up being a really comfortable medium in which to sort of put ideas out there, even if they were somewhat half-baked.
Right, and very briefly.
And very briefly, get it out there.
Long, large that takes forever. But I also think, part of it from the very beginning was about mentoring junior women and giving them a space to speak.
Yep. And getting women's name out there who were doing good work. I think there's some interesting research, and I haven't looked at it recently, about quality versus quantity of articles. Women tend to write sometimes fewer articles if they're in academia, but they tend to be of higher quality. They're longer, they've got more footnotes, they're maybe, not repetitive of previous work. And so I think we're a little cautious sometimes about putting ideas out. And so, again, encouraging younger people to just put their voice out there, put their ideas out there, and not feel like it has to be absolutely perfect before it gets circulated to the world.
Right, and I think there's often less comfort with self-promotion. I still get that even with pretty established academics when I see they've written a book and I say, hey, would you blog about this? Or someone says, I was thinking I might blog about this new book, but is that too shamelessly self-promotional? No. That's why this blog is here. And the whole purpose is so that you will promote yourself in ways that you might not have otherwise felt comfortable doing.
And not for just the sheer sake of self-promotion, but because you have good ideas, and they should be in circulation, and they should be influential, and that's what the blog enables people to do.
Yeah.
I don't know how different the actual writing is. I mean, this was meant to be a blog by and about women in international law, so some of the topics are very gendered, and it's about gender, but not all of them. So we have women writing about the whole range of international law issues. So is the voice different? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe there's more attention to victims' issues, certainly more attention to gender. I think that's fair.
Right.
More critical voices, probably.
I think our readership is probably more international, though, there's always work to be done. We'd always like it to be more international, but I think there's a real focus on trying to get international contributors and to encourage a really global readership as much as possible.
And we also featured works that were not typical blogs, which now we can say there is such a thing as a typical blog. So Diane for a long time was doing On This Day, where she would look at that day of the history and point out some interesting or several interesting pieces of history, often that had to do with women or international law or the influence of women on international law. And so it was tying current events back to history. We do calls for papers, we do jobs. So it's meant to be a whole resource for our readers, I think, in a way that some of the other blogs are a little more academic in nature.
And I
think the most interesting thing happened was that in 2012, when we put the blog on hiatus, so we'd been running the blog for a while, and it was just a lot of work, soliciting articles, soliciting contributions from people, and editing, and uploading. It was a pretty rigorous process, and Beth was going to work for the State Department, Diane was taking on that work at the ICC, and I just had a second child, and we all felt like we just couldn't handle the administrative burden anymore, and we closed it down, and then we got such an outcry from so many people, which was really amazing, because I don't think we'd realized how many people's lives we'd touched or how important people felt the blog was to them. And then we switched to a totally new platform that was really much less about us curating the blog and much more about just letting voices out there. And I really at that point had no expectation that the blog would survive for more than 6 months. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to open this up and see where it goes. And I'm still amazed every week by the incredible new content that's out there. And I think we'd been talking for a long time about doing a conference, and then I think Diane got it in her head that this is perfect, this is the 10th anniversary, and March 3rd is a Friday.
Those symbolisms,
right. So let's do it. So we said, okay.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting how the evolution of the technology made it easier to keep the blog going, because the old format we were using did require a lot of intervention by us, whereas the new blogging formats can be almost self-executing. Individuals can very easily blog, they can very easily post, and so it takes less work from us. And then there's also no barrier to new people starting, because it is so easy to do.
Right.
Looking at panels that are not all men. I mean, we grew up, entered academia with the dreaded manel.
Yes.
Panels full of men, one token female potentially, and to have a room full of female academics, in some cases talking about gender issues, but in other cases talking about weapons of mass destruction or terrorism or counterterrorism. I mean, every topic has been covered here by women and by many young women who maybe are making their first academic presentation or getting their first paper published, and giving them a space that's very nurturing and supportive and inspiring, I think, is part of what the blog was about. And now we've managed to come all together and do face-to-face interactions, and so I think that will only spur more young women to enter the field and to have the courage to put their ideas out there.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to meet everybody that you read their stuff. I know, communicated with over the years to meet them live. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and to have reunions with people who we don't see
Don't see
often
often
enough, but would like to
Yeah.
see more of. Yeah.
Yeah.